playing against him was different. I wanted to murder him, like most people do, I think. But do you know what? He's actually a really, really good kid off the field. I think sometimes you can get that. You see a player play for 80 minutes and you just assume that he's that type of person off the field. And actually he's a champion, really down to earth.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Back 10. I'm your host Kyle Amor and this week you may notice we are back in our home. We were on the road last week but for a very special reason. We of course interviewed NRL, Queensland, Brisbane Bronco legend Darren Lockyer, and if you didn't see it, there's a good chance that you aren't subscribed. So make sure, guys, that you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything here at All Out Rugby League. And talking about episodes, well, we're joined here by another legend of the game. The big names just keep coming each and every week. Our guest this week has won no more than 8 Super League titles, 2 Challenge Cups, and 3 World Club Challenges. If you haven't guessed it already, I'm delighted to be joined by Leeds Rhinos legend Danny McGuire. Danny, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thanks. Yeah, I'm all right. Not too bad.
And Matt, welcome.
I'm here as well. Yeah.
You don't quite get that big rap, but how have you been?
I've been good. We should have recorded at Headingley again, shouldn't we? You'd have felt more at home.
It'd been easier than stuck in that traffic on the motorway, wouldn't it?
We'd have all avoided the M62 as well. The damn M62. But anyway, we can't have it all.
Well, we're here now, aren't we? So, Magsy, what have you been up to then?
Yeah, it's been obviously crazy the last few months. To be honest with you, it's been tough. Yeah, it's been tough. I'm not going to lie. Obviously, what happened at Cass, and I've just tried to keep busy. Really, I've just tried to keep learning, keep doing some things, doing a bit of media stuff. I went to a couple of rugby union clubs, spent some time there, just trying to see how different sports work. Spent a bit of time with Mike Pete at Wigan and Lockers and Tommy. I enjoyed that. A bit of time with Brad Arthur at Leeds. So I've just been, just trying to keep busy, keep learning, keeping motivated, and just waiting for an opportunity to come around.
It's something I always wonder. Once a coach sort of leaves or gets sacked or whatever, I always wonder what they then go on and do. But obviously, Danny's been pretty busy looking at other clubs. Maybe some opportunities later down the line for him.
I'm sure there'll be something that comes up for Danny. I'm just surprised you didn't go on holiday and have a few beers in the sun.
I did have a little break as well. I think it's always important to get the balance right. Life's all about balancing it, but I just wanted to be proactive. I think it would be really easy to sit and fester and moan and whinge and be disappointed with what happened. But I tried to be as positive as possible and try and keep busy. Yeah.
Well, before we get into that part there, where where your time in coaching currently came to an end, let's just go all the way back to 2020. You joined Hull KR as an assistant coach under Tony Smith. You end up taking charge once Tony moves on. You won 5 of the last 10 games. Was it that moment there where you felt this is what I want to do, even though it was only sort of 2 years into your apprenticeship, if you like?
Yeah, I feel like when I finished playing at KR, I loved my time at KR, by the way, really did, and really enjoyed my experiences there. And initially, I was going to do the recruitment. I'd sort of seen assistant coaches when I was at Leeds and see the work that they had to do, and always on the laptops, and that kind of wasn't what I really liked about coaching. I like to be on the field. I like to be influencing the players, and I'd seen some of the things that were happening with the assistants and stuff, and I wasn't quite sure it was for me. And then I was doing some coaching with like the scholars and the academy, and I just got the bug. And obviously, Tony was head coach then, and so I ended up spending a year working alongside him, or 18 months, learnt loads in that time. And I think, when you finish playing, you'll know, Kyle, when you finish playing, you miss that connection. You miss that, I suppose, the changing rooms and what being part of a team is about. And I think coaching gives you as close to that as you can get. You're still on that week to week sort of grind, and you're all striving for that same sort of goal. And so I fell into it, really. I fell in love with it. I did. I felt like I was obliged to try and give back to the game a little bit, and give back to some of the players. And use some of my experiences and some of my, I suppose, moments that I'd been lucky enough to enjoy and be part of, and sort of influence the next generation. So I loved it at KR. The playing was tough, but obviously the club's been on a bit of a journey, and obviously we're seeing the success now. But that 10 games, I think you said the 10 games, I enjoyed it. We were down to the bare bones, but I ended up bringing the team together, and I suppose that did give me the bug of what it would be like to, give me a bit of a feel of what it would be like to be head coach.
Yeah, and you spoke about that journey that Hull KR are on now. Well, you were very much a part of that, weren't you? Under Willie Peters. I suppose what was it like working with Willie, and what things did you, what experiences or skills did you gain from working with him?
Work ethic, intensity, the way he goes about things is second to none. And there's no, I think there was a good foundation laid for Willie, and I remember first conversation I had with Neil Hudgell and Mike Smith about how the club were going to grow and get better. And, we were just chatting before about culture. And for me, it was more about the environment. We needed to get some better people, and, not so much better players, but better people that cared in the club. And, I say this a fair bit. The first two players that I had an involvement in signing were Jez Litton and Dean Hadley. And they're still now stalwarts of the team, two real key players within the squad. And, I'm quite proud that, I was able to help influence that. And, not long after that, Mikey Lewis signed a long-term contract. So, I'm happy with, some of the things that happened at KR and some of the, and I really enjoyed my time under Willie, really enjoyed working with him, great coach, and obviously they've had some success this year as well, which were really nice to see.
I was just going to ask Danny, I sort of touched on it with Jez and Dean, because I know you had a big say in that. The recruitment's evolved, hasn't it, over time? Like they signed a lot of younger players, James Batch, Elliot Minchella, so on and so forth. They've gone kind of down a different route in more recent times. How have you assessed how Rovers have gone about the recruitment and getting to be where they are now on the brink of a domestic double?
I mean, I think, again, as I mentioned it before, I think you've got to lay some foundations before you go for them sort of top end signings. And I think it was really important we got some proper people in the club that cared. And I know Jez and Dean were from FC, but they were Hull lads.
Yeah.
They were Hull lads, and a bit of an identity, and get some players in that were there for the right reasons. It helps when you can build up your corporate, your commercial. The fans are turning out. They've obviously got a lot of financial backing now, and they're able to go and sign world stars now. So, but I think probably there's a couple of signings around the time that I was there. Sean Kennedy-Dowell was huge.
Yeah, of course.
He was sort of he was about the environment, I think, and he played great. Don't get me wrong, he was brilliant on the field for the players, but it was the way he went about things, his day-to-day practices and what he did, and his influence on the rest of the players. And I think his signing, and Tony was. I can't take any responsibility of that one. That was all Tony, and he had a huge influence on the growth of KR, and probably still has now. In the coaching department.
So, Magsy, how did the time sort of come to an end then at KR? You moved over to Castleford as an assistant there. We'll get into Castleford, but how did it was?
It probably didn't end the way I would have liked it to, and I think that's I'm good with it now. I was really disappointed at the time, and I felt like I was on that journey, and I kind of wanted to see it through. I could see it coming. I could see the success on the horizon. I could see the players that were coming on board, and I'm really keen to be part of that. And there was just a few differences really, and Willie wanted to change his staff up, and there were some opportunities at Cass initially for the head coach, but obviously I didn't feel like I was ready for that, and that's when I took the assistant alongside Linners, and did my I wanted to do my apprenticeship right. I didn't want to jump into a coaching job before I was ready, so I felt like I needed to do a little bit more time. And
You've took the next question away from me.
Sorry,
My next question was, look, we sit here in hindsight, right? But do you feel that, going from 2020 to then becoming the head coach at 2024, do you think that maybe you could have done a little bit longer? What was the rush to take that opportunity when it came?
I have to be really careful what I say now, but a little bit of pressure from the club. Obviously the ownership and everything was changing at Cass. They wanted to go in a different direction. I was happy to carry on doing my assistant duties at Cass. I was enjoying it. I enjoyed working with Will Inners. We'd not had a great season, but the new ownership wanted a change. And it was kind of basically forced on me, to be honest with you. I was put in a situation where I couldn't really turn it down, even though deep down, if I'm being honest, I probably knew it wasn't the right time and the right opportunity. But I was sold, this project. It's going to be a 3 to 5 year plan, and we're going to grow. The club's going to grow alongside you, and I kind of bought into that. I thought, these opportunities don't come around too often, and if you miss it, you turn it down, and you get any regrets later in life. I always back myself, and I'd always, be brave enough to put my head on the block a little bit, and I went for it, and it didn't kind of work out. But I think you only regret something you've not done. So I've learnt loads, and I feel like I'm a better coach and a better person for it.
What made you think deep down it wasn't the right time? Was it where you were at, or where the club and the squad was at?
Combination.
Okay.
Yeah, combination of both. I knew there was going to be no movement in the squad. I'd worked with the players. The players were all class. I'd never say anything bad about the players. They were receptive. They wanted to improve. They were trying the hardest, both for the 18 months that I were there. But being honest, we lacked quality. The squad lacked quality, lacked depth. And I kind of knew that, but I was willing to work with it, help the players improve. That's what I do as a coach. I love working with the players, love trying to help the players get better, especially on the field, working with the skill stuff and the technical side of the game. It was more that I could see something good. Cass is a great rugby league town. The fans are amazing. It's got a real pure, I don't even know what the word is, but passion in the town for the game, and I could sense it, and I would have liked to have been part of that long term, but it's a crazy game that we're all involved in it. Some of these beliefs and dreams that you have, sometimes don't kind of work out, and it's a bit sad, but it happens.
Magsy, sorry, you mentioned recruitment and your role in, of helping getting in Jeslett and Dean Hadley. You're at Cass. You're going to be the head coach for season 2025. You said there before there wasn't much movement in the squad. You did bring in a couple of players. Was the recruitment? Did you have a say in the recruitment prior to taking on the job, or because really you inherited this squad? I'm just wondering, as a head coach, surely you had some part in recruiting of 2025.
I took the job 10 days before the start of pre-season, so I had 10 days to plan a pre-season. So obviously what goes into planning and being in charge of a rugby league team. It doesn't happen overnight. It's months and months of preparation. And I was in Spain on my holidays when I took the job, and I had to turn around and put a plan together. And some of the boys have said it was one of the toughest and best pre-seasons that they had, and that's why I'm really content with some of the things that we did. The recruitment had already been done, obviously, because I took the job really late. So
who was heading up the recruitment?
So Danny Wilson, and obviously Craig Lingard was his coach at the time. So most of the signings, pretty much all the signings
were done
for this season were done before I took the job. We added a couple of players mid-season, Brad Singleton, Chris Atkin, Tom Amone, to try and bolster the ranks when we were short on numbers and down on troops a little bit. But it was, it was real. It was basically, this is the squad, and I was happy to do that. I saw the players. I know the players were working hard. I knew I could help influence that and help them grow, but probably just needed a bit more time.
Danny, Chris Chester comes in. April time, May time, maybe.
May the 8th.
May the 8th. Okay. You obviously get dismissed. It caught a lot of people out by surprise. That was my question. Were you blindsided by the decision? And you'll have had time to think about and process what happened. We know that Ryan Carr's coming in now. Do you feel like maybe there was already a plan once Chris Chester came in that didn't involve you or not?
I'd like to hope not. I'd like to hope it won't. There wasn't some sort of plan going on behind the scenes. Chesney came in and I was really happy with that. I thought it was a really good step to come in and have somebody with his experience in recruitment. It was something that the club had struggled with for a long time. The signings, I can't remember the last time Cass got an overseas signing right. And look at Chesney's record at Lee, very, very strong in recruitment. I was happy to work alongside that and for him to help us grow as a club. And he came in and he observed for a few weeks, and I got some feedback after about 6 weeks saying that he was feeding back to the board that he was really happy with what we were delivering to the players. We were getting as much out of the players as we could. That's why it came as a shock.
I was going to say, what changed then? 6 weeks in. Yeah.
There was an observation that many fans were saying, Magsy, really, in the games is, it almost seemed like Chris Chester's seat at the games was getting closer and closer and closer towards your box where you and Brett Delaney. And did you feel that he was starting to maybe have a bit more involvement, and how did that sit with you? In terms of in and around the group and the sheds and whatnot.
Look, I'm happy. I know I knew where I was at as a coach, and I was always, I was never not wanting to take advice off people. I was a sponge. I wanted information. And Chesney has got some experience as a coach, and I was happy to use that. There's some things that happened that I probably weren't comfortable with, and maybe voicing them concerns was one of the issues why it didn't kind of work out. But
such as
I feel like coaching, when you're giving messages to players, whatever it is, it has to be crystal clear. If your messages are grey or not with the right authority, then players always find a way to try and twist it. Not in a bad way, but it's just the way some players are. And there was a couple of things that kind of happened where, as coaches, we were saying one thing, and then they might have been getting information that was different to what we were giving them as players, and you just can't have that in an environment. It doesn't work. And I thought Chesney was into do the recruitment stuff, and I was cool with that. I was happy with that. No problems working alongside that, but I was the coach. Whatever I decided and my coaching staff decided, that's what needed to be delivered to the players. And there might have been some things that happened that I weren't comfortable with, and maybe that influenced some of the decisions that were made.
Did you voice that then?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
and I feel like I'm in the right to do that. I feel like not in a nasty way, not in it was just like where the coach is, we're giving the information to the players. Anything that you've got needs to come through us, and I was happy for that. I wanted to take on information from people with experience, and but I just felt it probably wasn't done in the right way.
Magsy, last question on this. 2 months later, when Chris Chester joins, you then face the sack, 7th of July, I think it was. We're almost 2 months further down the line. We talked about there that you inherited this squad, you were sold this dream. What's your overriding feeling now, sat where you are today? Because many people could sort of say that it came as a big surprise because, nobody saw it coming as such. I just want to get your overriding feeling of what does Danny McGuire really think and feel about what's happened to him? I
don't know. I'm still angry. I don't know how long that's. I'm quite fiery. I'm disappointed. I did see. I suppose
in whom
naively, I probably saw this project and this. I've always been a winner. I always want to win. I want to be successful. I want to be the best at anything that I ever do. And I could kind of see things happening. I could, behind the scenes, there were some really good things happening at the club. The environment was improving. It was a better place for the players to be part of. And every player sent me a message, when I got the sack, saying that they loved working with me, and they were sad to see me go. So, in a weird, I'm really content with what I delivered in my time at Cass. Really content with it, and I know I worked hard. I know I influenced the players. I know I helped the players get better. Were some of the results disappointing in early part of this year? Yeah, but were we competing as well? For most of the games, yeah. So overall, I'm content. I am, because I think if you know that you've given everything and it's not quite worked, then you can be okay with it. And learnt loads along the way, loads of good things, loads of things that I'll use going forward, and some things that I probably would do a little bit differently.
Not put you off coaching? Are you ready to jump back in right now? It
scarred me. It has scarred me. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I think when you get in coaching, when you're involved in coaching, you know the game. You know it's ruthless. You know one day you can be employed, and one result can kind of change that. So I'm not naive enough to know that that wasn't going to happen. But I just felt like I trusted a little bit too much, and I probably won't do that ever again. I'll probably make sure that everything's watertight and I'm in a position not to be in this position again.
I remember talking to Adrian Morley some time ago, and he told me that there's two types of coaches: those who have been sacked and those who are waiting to be sacked. So it is a ruthless industry. But Magsy, let's talk about some more positives rather than the negative side of the game that you've experienced. 2001, you make your debut for Leeds Rhinos against Salford. You go on to be Super League's top try scorer. I read out there all that list of titles and trophies and Super League top try scorer. How does that make you feel? Because we've talked there about an experience that scarred you.
Yeah.
But when you flip it on its head and you look at what you've done in the game, that must make you feel proud.
Oh yeah, I was lucky. I feel like my career was I was really lucky all along. I didn't have too many moments that I look back on with disappointment. I was part of a great club, played with so many great players, part of so many great moments for the club. Wouldn't change a thing. Loved my time. Obviously I'm a Leeds lad representing that's always more special as well when you feel like you're part of it a little bit more, and being a Leeds lad and being growing up in East Leeds and then being able to represent your city. I don't think there's anything more special, and obviously to win what we did, to be in the big games, to have them amazing memories, and obviously some good individual memories as well, which you touched on there as well. But Ryan Hall's beating me now, and Josh Charnley. But yeah, I'm again very similar to what I said about the coaching. When I hung up my boots, I was so content. I walked off the pitch in my last game in one piece, and I was happy to sort of give it up then, knowing that I'd achieved a lot, and I was really, really lucky.
Well, 2001, we all know the success that the Rhinos had, starting from, I think it was 2004 and then onwards. What was the club like back in 2001? Because they weren't really known for being a winning club, were they? What was it like as a young kid coming through into that environment?
Do you know what was so strong? The academy was really strong though. Like the first team was a bit, I think they'd got to a couple of Challenge Cup finals, and Wigan was strong, and Saints were strong, and Bradford was strong, but you could just see it sort of brewing behind the scenes. And I think that's where clubs get it wrong now. If you're not having strong junior, strong academy, strong scholarship, then you just can't compete. It's impossible. So I think you could kind of feel it brewing. I remember Dean Bell was in charge of his head of youth development at Leeds, and it was full on. It was professional. It was like, this is your expectations. This is what's needed to be done. We're winning. And kind of at 16, when you're thrown into that, it's pretty daunting. But it was such a good foundation, such a good sort of learning, that when we went into the first team in 2000, 2001, we were already ready for it. We were prepared. We were professional. We were doing the right things. And I suppose the success in the academy, then we just kind of carried that on into 2003, 4, and obviously so on. But I think that foundation that was laid at that time was, second to none, really, I think.
Looking back, what was the turning point that made, you mentioned the academy with the foundation, what was the next point where that made Leeds the grand final champions that you ultimately became?
Tony Smith, I think.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
really.
as simple as that, yeah.
Yeah, without Tony, like Darryl was a coach. Darryl was a young coach, probably similar to sort of my experience, really. We got to the Challenge Cup final, I think, in 3, and like 10 seconds away from getting to the grand final. And then Darryl got the sack, which is like, you know, I feel hard done to getting the sack. Jesus Christ, what must he have felt like? And Darryl was a great coach, and I've worked with him since with England. And but I think that whether it was a masterstroke by Gary, I've said this a few times, whether Gary knew that Tony was this super coach and was going to maximise everything out of this young, hungry group, then if Gary did know that, is even better than I believe. But Tony was sensational for them 4 or 5 years at Leeds. He didn't miss a thing, just on it 24/7. We lived and breathed the game, and obviously we had a lot of success. We had a really young, hungry group, and I think it just kind of fit with Tony and the way he coached and the way he went about things, and he was able to get the best out of us.
What's your relationship like with Tony now? And the reason I ask is because he left Hull KR in, it was unique circumstances, wasn't it? I just remember that press conference where he came in and said, "I'm off."
Yeah.
It all felt a bit messy.
Yeah, it was messy at the end, because I was playing at KR when Tony came back, and I actually rang Tony to come coach us. I got him out of retirement, and I don't think he was ever too happy about that, because he was enjoying what he was doing. He was doing the football sort of stuff, and he was amazing for us in that period of time. But then it all sort of, he had a bit of a fallout with the chief exec at the time, and I was coaching, and I'd been at the club a fair bit of time, so it was ugly. It was ugly, and probably didn't end our relationship. Probably didn't end I would have liked. Obviously, then I was asked to take over for the rest of the season, which is never good. You know, I don't think you ever like that as a coach. But I seen him actually at the Hall of Fame dinner not so long ago, and we had a chat. So, but he's been an amazing coach, hasn't he? And you know what, I'd definitely say he's the biggest influence in my career, with what he gave us in that 4 or 5 years he was at Leeds.
So moving to the Rhinos here today, they had a little blip, didn't they, against the Catalan Dragons, who were brilliant, by the way, in that game. Look, there's been an awful long time between drinks, between the Rhinos tasting success from when you last did it. Do you believe that they're building something now, and do you believe that this could be their year?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think there's been a huge improvement this year, hasn't there? I think the last, I'll always, even when I was coaching against Leeds and trying to mastermind the downfall, and that connection and that feel never went away, and I always wanted Leeds to do well. And it was a really tough period watching Leeds in that period from 18 to maybe I think they get a Challenge Cup final and in there, but I think the expectations are so high. If you go watch Leeds Rhinos, you expect in the playoffs, you expect finals, you expect to win. And I think this year, this year's probably the first year when I've spoke to a lot of Rhinos fans that they've got that feeling again. They've got that feeling where they go to a game and it's expecting to win, and the pressure's on the players a little bit. I think Brad Arthur's done an amazing job. He seems to have galvanised the group, got them playing with passion and spirit, and yeah, they've had a really good year and contenders for me.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned earlier that you'd been into Leeds Rhinos. What was the biggest thing that you noticed about Brad Arthur in terms of what he has on the group?
I think he's just got an aura, Brad. He's quite intimidating to say.
Seems a very direct bloke,
yeah,
doesn't he?
I just don't think he minces his words. He's very clear with his messages, knows how he wants the game to be played. I think if you watch his interviews, he talks about physical and being tough, and his messages were very simple but very direct, and the players know what he wants and what he demands. And our game, it's simple. It's a territory-based physical battle that if you're not prepared to get dirty, then you're not going to win. No. You can't dip your toe in and expect to win. So the more players that you've got that are prepared to bust the nose, get a black eye, come off not in the best, in the feeling the best, the more chance you've got of winning. And they've got some players like Jake Connor, Lockie Miller that can ice them moments.
Well, you're good at this because you've jumped on to my next question here. Jake Connor, of course, 30 try assists to his name already, been missing with that rib injury. How impressed have you been with him? And is there a way, or should he then be playing for England in the Ashes?
I've always been impressed. I've always been a huge fan of him, watching him play his Huddersfield days, his Hull FC days. Playing against him was different. I wanted to murder him, like most people do, I think. But do you know what? He's actually a really, really good kid off the field. I think sometimes you can get that. You see a player play for 80 minutes and you just assume that he's that type of person off the field. And actually he's a champion, really down to earth. And I think he's been good this year. I think he's been really good. And I think he's found a coach that probably intimidates him a little bit and, knows what he needs to do and knows that he can't shirk some of that tough stuff that he maybe did back in the day. I think he's been strong defensively. I think for a halfback, it's not something you would assume. You would associate with a halfback about being tough, but if you're not tough as a halfback, you're just going to get spotted. You're not going to go to the line. You're not going to create opportunities because, you need to be brave. And I think that's one part of his game that I've enjoyed watching this year. And the England thing, Sean Wayne's a great coach and he'll have his own ideas. But I believe he's in the top 20 players in the country. So for me, he should be in the squad somewhere. He can play numerous positions. And that benefits the whole group.
Interesting.
Few things from me. You talked about coaching and you went in. Is the dream to go back to Leeds? Or would you actually rather stay away from Leeds?
No, I'd love to go back to Leeds at some point. I'd love to. It's my home. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's my home. I was there from 11 to 30 and I left just before I was 35. So you can't spend 20 plus years at an organisation and not have that connection, can you? It's just, I go back. I was working on Thursday with Rob Oates, doing in the commercial stuff, doing the boxes and, speaking before the game, which I really enjoy that. But I love coaching. I love coaching. I love, trying to help the next generation be great players. And, my son's playing now. I love watching my son play. And, I'm like I said before, the sacking has probably scarred me a little bit, but it hasn't put me off. It hasn't put me off coaching. It's probably put a little bit of fire in my belly to prove a few people wrong.
Just one last question I'm going to ask, going back a little bit. That you played in that amazing team. You eventually left. You went to Hull KR. Do you look back now and think I should have left earlier, or do you not regret staying as long as you do? Because let's be right, that team, unbelievable success, legendary status. Financially, everyone could have had more money by playing elsewhere. So I wondered what you thought about that all now.
I do. Occasionally I think about it, but I was always happy. Honestly, I was always happy. And I think if you're happy, you're content, that's where you play your best. And I had no real reason to leave. Like I had a couple of opportunities to go to the NRL, but financially now it's crazy. You can go to the NRL for 3 years and you can make serious money. It probably wasn't the case back then. And I probably, rugby union stuff, I probably would have been doing it for the wrong reasons. If I'm in a position, if I'm 25 now and playing at Leeds, I'm probably looking at NRL now thinking, hello, there's the dollars and, originally it was the overseas players coming over here for a pension. I'd never, young English players now, why wouldn't you look to go to NRL? You can set yourself up for life. If you do 3 or 4 years down there, you can come back in a real strong position. So, I'd never begrudge a player looking at that opportunity now.
Well, look, guys, unfortunately, we say it every week, we could have so much more time with our guests, but we are out of time. Do not forget to hit the notification bell, like and subscribe so you don't miss anything across the world of rugby league here at Back 10. Magsy, thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers,
scarred you may be, but still got the fire in your belly, which is great to hear. We want to see more and more British coaches, young British coaches in the game, carving out for the next generation, really, don't we, Matt? So,
absolutely.
Thanks once again, and we'll see you all next week. Bye for now.